Advanced TV Herstory, the podcast that brings you fresh perspective on the importance of TV in our lives. We tell stories of leadership, persistence, and achievement of TV women, because in the lives of women, no other media platform has influenced or inspired so many. Lo, these 60 years. Women of all ages have been impacted by what they've seen and will see on TV. So join us for a little advanced TV herstory by streaming it directly on our website, tvherstory.com, or anywhere you find podcasts. I'm your host, Cynthia Bemis Abrams. TV Herstoryans, we are in for a special treat today. I have on the phone with me Briana Venskus, who is a face you would see and you have seen so many different times. I know I have, and I was thrilled when I had the opportunity via a contact of mine in the business to talk to Briana, not just about her career and her projects, but also a few matters that are kind of near and dear to her heart, this whole idea of representation. So I am going to let her do an awful lot of talking, in part because I want to make sure that this connection stays live and that we make good use of her time, because she's got a table read or something in like an hour. So it is a great pleasure for me to bring Briana to Advanced TV Herstory, where here we are, we're telling stories of the women of TV. So Briana, thank you for being on our show today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
And we are thrilled because you're in the throes of your career. You are only on the upswing. The opportunity is there. And yet you do have, I believe, some real strong observations about TV herstory, the women who preceded you and their challenges and where you are in trying to carry the mantle, pull the wagon, whatever metaphor we want to use.
Yeah.
All of that. I'm just going to jump in by asking a little bit about your background and how it is that you ended up in the entertainment field, the kind of training you had.
I've started, I guess, this whole crazy adventure back home in North Carolina. And I guess when I was a kid, I always wanted to do something in the entertainment industry or, movies, really. I didn't really watch too much TV growing up, but I did watch movies pretty much nonstop. And so I always wanted to have that be what I did. Like I wanted to be one of the guys on the big screen. So I kind of got like involved in local theater, and then I went to an arts high school. And then from there, I got accepted to a conservatory school in California. And that was back in 2004, 2005. So I've been in California pretty much ever since, just kind of like hitting the ground running. I went to school, I did 4 years of training, and then I was set loose on the city of Los Angeles, and the rest is herstory, if you will.
Excellent. So the movies that you saw that inspired you, who were some of those? Who were some of the women? Who were some of the characters? Who were some of the men who inspired you and whispered to you, come, you can do this?
Oh my goodness. I really was a big like comedy kid. I loved to laugh and I loved being silly and stupid. So, Lily Tomlin for me growing up, like I used to watch all of those Canadian, kind of like the Canadian version of SNL, which is basically where a lot of like our United States Canadian sort of actors came to. I loved watching anything that had to do with women being dumb and stupid and being actual people and not just being put up on a pedestal and like told that they had like a good butt. I loved watching girls like get dirty and make people laugh and like fall on the ground. And I was a huge SNL kid. I loved that you could be on a TV and look like an idiot. Like that to me is like the pipe dream. You also have like the classics. Like I grew up obviously just admiring Meryl Streep because she's, the holy grail of female actors and paved the way for so many people. And then you have like, smaller actresses. Like I love Ellen Bernstein. I think she's like one of the most fantastic creatures to ever grace the screen. And then you just have like these, I never really related so much to a particular person and so much kind of became like a ride or die hard fan of theirs. So much as I did sort of just, watch films and watch different projects and just see these supporting side characters and smaller roles that just left you with more of an imprint. There's so many actresses out there that like I can't even begin to give their names because there's hundreds of us that just have these great little scenes, or, they play a mother, they play an aunt, or they play a friend, and they just bring so much life to roles. And I think that watching that, it kind of really grounded these extravagant films that I grew up watching. And I think I just wanted that. I just wanted to have some sort of grasp to reality within the world of TV and film.
And that makes total sense. It makes total sense. And it also weaves in, I hate to bring in representation too early into the conversation.
Oh, no, please do.
But when we think about how many men are cast as extras, as one line, as the person at the front desk, as the two people that they get bumped into in the lobby or whatever. And these are men, and those roles go to them. And as a result, their careers move ahead a little faster.
Absolutely.
And yet you watch, anytime you're watching a movie like from the 80s or the 90s and all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, there's Joan Cusack. Isn't she great? Or there's Laurie Metcalf, or there's a young Laurie Metcalf.
So many times you're just like, holy crap, you're like, wait a minute.
Exactly. So you should know that for the holidays, my daughter bought and then sent to my husband to give me for Christmas a black T-shirt that says "Cast Joan Cusack More." And
I love it.
Right. And so I have that, and I have my Golden Girls T-shirt, and those are really the only two T-shirts like that I wear because I'm middle-aged and have to. I don't have that many places to wear things that otherwise look like I'm going to wash the car. And it is amazing. People look at it and then they smile and like they nod and everything. And so it's like this little political statement.
Absolutely.
Because I can't wear my T-shirt from 2016 anymore. Anyway. All right. So we are going to move on a little bit just to talk about the projects that you're associated with now and how people can actually see who you are, because they're going to go to IMDb as it is and look you up.
Yeah.
But you're working on all kinds of things. And I want to get that up front because that's sort of the context then for our other discussions about representation and the roles that you've had and the roles that you want.
I hop around a bunch. I'm currently working on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D, which is a Marvel show on ABC. And that's really been keeping me the busiest. I do have a new project that is going to be coming out soon. I'm not technically allowed to talk about it yet, but it's really, it's a good show for, I think, a younger audience, which I'm really excited about. Because I feel like we have so many shows these days that are kind of geared towards people who are more like my age or maybe in their 40s or 50s or 60s, like more thought piece shows. But this show is definitely it's just a younger, kind of fresher show that is really still breaking a lot of boundaries in terms of what they talk about and how they talk about it, which is I think really exciting. So I'm really excited to be a part of that show.
And will we see that on ABC, NBC, or CBS, or a streaming service?
It'll be coming out on a cable network in the beginning of 2019. And as soon as I can say anything, you better believe I'll be blasting all about it.
Yeah. All right. And we will retweet it and then retweet a link of this episode of Advanced TV Herstory. So, well, that's great. That's great.
Yes, I'm hopping around a bunch. It's good.
Your phone is ringing. That's a good thing.
Yes, absolutely.
And Walking Dead, are you still? I've lost track. Did that come to a dead stop, or?
We ended season 8 by winning the grand battle against Negan, and so now in season 9, we're picking up the show and the aftermath of that event. So it's definitely going to be an interesting season, to say the least. And that comes out in only 3 weeks. That's October 7th, I think that airs. So.
And Outcast, you're in Outcast, and that.
Yes, Outcast. Yes, the funny part about Outcast is we shot that almost 2 years ago now. So that we shot back actually when I started working on The Walking Dead the same year. And it just kind of got lost in limbo for a while, but it finally started airing, which I'm so excited about because that was one of the creepiest shows I've ever worked on. And it just looks the footage and the scenes and everything just looks so cool from it.
Excellent. Well, I recognize you from Nashville and Grace and Frankie. And immediately I'm like, oh yeah, I remember the reality TV show arc and Lila and Will Lexington.
Oh, it's so good. Whenever I tell people I'm on that show, they're always like, who were you? And then as soon as I say reality TV show, they're like, oh, wait, that was you?
Yeah, it just, that whole story arc, it had a very bit of a soap opera feel to it, but
oh, absolutely. I mean, that's kind of like the thing you have to love about Nashville in general is like, it was like the nighttime soap. Like it was just, you like had all your friends and you wanted to see what they did every week.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. And I did watch it right up until, now it is no longer, but I thought that their little finale was good. It wrapped everybody up. Yeah, it was good. So, an important show, which, just kind of, I don't know, it was right for the time.
It was absolutely right for the time. Yes.
So we've kind of covered what you're doing today and a little bit of why you're doing it. We love to talk about storytelling, and we love to talk about who's doing the storytelling and how it is that really what we see should be as inclusive as who we are, because everybody likes to see themselves on TV, even redheads. Absolutely. And Connie Britton, because she's everybody's somebody, right?
Exactly.
So that brings me to how it is that I found out that you're involved with clexacon, which I'm guessing American listeners might not even know. So you're going to have to give us a little clexacon 101 and help us understand why this event is important to us and what it's all about.
Clexacon, I believe now they're going into their third year of the event. So it is still relatively new. So it would make sense that not many people would know about it. It's a really great event that these girls put together. And it just sort of, if anyone is a big fan of any sort of sci-fi or any sort of show that has I don't want to say like a cult following, but has more of a solid fan base, and you go to these things called conventions where you can go and you have the chance to meet particular actors or particular writers or producers from the shows. These conventions are gigantic. They usually have hundreds and thousands of people in them. You're usually sifting through probably 50, 60 different shows with about 100 to 200 different actors. It costs anywhere from like $60 to like $100 and something to meet the person that you really want to meet, or to like give them, like have a chance to talk to them. So it's the world of conventions, like while it is really great and gives you the opportunity to meet people, can be extremely overwhelming, especially if you are someone who is in the LGBTQ community that has shows and has characters that they really relate to, but doesn't necessarily feel like they have a place in that larger format setting. And so I think clexacon sort of takes all of the fluff away from it and just gives people a place to come and sort of streamline their interests. And also takes, I think, a lot of the pressure off. I mean, I've personally never experienced any sort of, no, I don't want to say like bad attitudes or any sort of like ill will at a convention, but I do know that there are some people who definitely feel a little bit less comfortable going into conventions and, being out or being, LGBTQ. And it's just an uncomfortable experience because it's not their stomping ground. And I think that what clexacon does is just takes away all the BS and just lets them come to a space where they don't have to worry about, how this might look or how that might look or how this person's going to react to them or treat them or is there going to be anyone that I even want to see there? Like, what if I don't like it just takes away all that mess and just gives you an opportunity to meet the people on the shows that you actually watch. Mm-hmm. And from a large array of things, it goes from big TV shows to small TV shows to web series to just artists that you might be interested in. And it makes it affordable and it kind of caps it at a smaller amount. So you actually do have the chance to meet the people you want to meet and talk to them and get into panels. And they throw these great events where you get to meet other people in your community and talk to them about how you feel about a show or an event or an issue. And they just sort of make it like a very all-inclusive, fun, exciting, like it's a really unique event. And for as many that I've been to, it definitely has a very different vibe, and it almost just feels like a summer camp for LGBTQ.
That's really important because finally we're starting to recognize that within a realm even of an audience of a regular and popular show, one size does not fit all. And those larger events, they develop their own culture. And depending upon who's making decisions about organizing and what panels look like and what panels even talk about, either there's a fight in the, about what's going on or they've really dedicated themselves to inclusive approaches, but the money's there to be made and all of a sudden decisions start to get compromised. So kudos.
What I really do enjoy about it is we are, I think, entering an age where we can start doing things more for the reasons we want to do them versus the monetary side of it. But I think you do have a really good point that, a lot of the inclusive either storylines or characters or panels tend to get pushed to the wayside in larger events because they just, they're not going to make as much money for the event throwers, which is not to knock them at all. Like it's a business. Absolutely. You have to make money, but it's just nice that there's finally a space where that focus is taken away and it just becomes more about creating an event that you get to talk about whatever you want to talk about because it's already in that bubble. So.
Mm-hmm. And so I started off this by saying, well, you're involved in clexacon. What is it that you do? And what are some events coming up that you're going to be involved with? And when I say coming up, I guess realizing that listeners, we're talking in the middle of September 2018.
Yes, it is the middle of September. I'm doing both clexacon events coming up. So I'll be at the one in London, which is happening in early November. And then I'll be at the one again in Las Vegas next year, which I'm super, super excited about. And then the cool thing too about the girls over at clexacon is that they actually do these really neat sort of events throughout the year, or if it's either just like putting together a panel or doing like a meet and greet or a talk back, they kind of throw in these fun little events here and there where they kind of showcase, local writers, pieces of work, or they do like a TV, I think I got invited a while back to like go to a YouTube event space, and you just get to meet people who are in the world who are maybe not at the level that they aspire to be yet. And they kind of give them a platform to be able to have a voice and meet people and get out there and have some visibility, which is just, it's exceptional in the sense that I can't believe it took this long for somebody to do it, but I'm so happy that it's finally here.
It sounds like it's only going to grow. I remember when I did my episode on Dinah Shore, and that's how I ended up speaking about the Dinah and what it means with regard to economic development, what it means as far as there being this unmet need that has come to be this big event.
That event in particular has not only been, sort of the catalyst for the creation of many more events, but the event itself too is just kind of exploded, which is, it's nuts. I feel like anyone who really looked at the numbers of it would be like, oh, wait, there's something here. Maybe we should do this more.
Right. I mean, and that's, I think, how eyes continue to be opened. And I just finished recording an episode this morning, which is all of me talking. It's the whole Linda Bloodworth Thomason thing.
Oh, yeah.
And in many cases, I've gotten to the end of an episode and I try to remind listeners how it is that they can make a difference. What is it that we're doing apart from tweeting and retweeting somebody's tweets or liking their Facebook posts? And it's, everything from attending an opening night or an opening weekend of a film such as Hidden Figures or Wonder Woman. Mm-hmm. But it's also recognizing and being able to sway some numbers about the purchasing power of some of the demographic of who we are, whether we are in the Midwest, a woman in the Midwest, whether we are LGBTQ community, what that means, what the Dinah means for Palm Springs.
Yeah.
That is how minds change much more quickly. And the naysayers are just sort of sent to the back of the room to go, brood.
There's definitely a power in sort of like the stone cold facts of all of these events and all of these particular movies and shows and convention. Like there's a part of it that is just undeniably working. And there's undeniably like a need for it and a response to it. And I think the more that people just go out on a limb and start creating these events and start holding these particular events, I think the more people will realize like, oh, okay, well, maybe this is just it's the next step. It's the next wave of how everything works, which is, it's just, taking a second to get there.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And we find that with women in podcasting too.
Yeah.
If there is a special a conference just with women, it has a very different tone. The panels are different. The engagement is higher, and the price tag can actually be more, but that's okay because the women who are attending know that the value is going to be there. So it's getting interesting.
I think you definitely because there is such a kind of gaping hole in the availability of these events to women. I think they are more willing to be a part of something and pay out for something because they do know it's so rare.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you've been involved with clexacon for a couple of years, is that right?
This past year is my first year, but we all just hit it off, and I just love the event so much that I'm just hopping on board. They can't get rid of me now.
If I can ask then, whether it's in your clexacon conversations or some of the other, the talking that you're doing and the interacting with fans, mm-hmm. What do women in the audiences? What are you hearing from them with regard to LGBTQ voices and the roles, and even some of the controversies that we've seen with headlines such as Scarlett Johansson? I mean, do people come to you with those observations?
It's sort of all around the board. I mean, I get some people who come up and do want to dive into the politics of it all. And then a lot of it too is, I think, just given the nature of the shows that I work on, which is more of kind of like they're more superhero based. So we get a lot of like fans of not only like the Marvel DC universe, but there's a lot of like fan fiction. And so I get a lot of questions about being on shows where people are like shipping. It's a new thing called shipping, where people are shipping certain relationships. So I get a lot of those questions from people, or a lot of those ideas from people. But I definitely, I think, it's what I do like about the clexacon setup especially is that they do these sort of like meet and greets, and they do like a cocktail hour where you can actually stand and like talk to people. And I think in those conversations is when you really do start to get into the facts of, these are issues, and this is how I feel as a person who watches the show. And it's really great to meet you, or it's really great to talk to you because I've never seen this happen before. I want to see more of you on this type of something. Like, it's just, there's definitely a hunger when you go into an event like that for people to sort of get out every thought and every idea that they've had about something that you could possibly be a part of, because it's like the chance to really explore it. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's hard. I think given the ages of people, I think a bit of the younger crowd is a little bit more overtly socially active in terms of, saying what they feel, and like, wearing the pins and having the shirts and like being very out there and very just like, this is what I think and this is what I want to see. And like, you'll hear like a very verbal, almost like active call and response if something is happening. But then I think you also get a lot of people who come to these events and are, they're much more the observers who just want to sit and kind of enter into quiet conversation, or just sort of hear what the panelists have to say, and will come up to you and just be like, hey, I came out, 3 years ago, but I'm, a 55-year-old woman, and I'm finally finding myself, and I just really enjoy seeing someone like you on TV, and it just means a lot to me, and I just hope to see more because it helped me a lot with what I'm going through. And I think that kind of vast array of response that you get from this event is what makes it so special, because for some people, yes, it is just a fun time to go and have a blast and meet people and be excited to like see your favorite stars from TV. But for others, it really is a chance to sort of walk up to someone and say, like, you really helped me through this, and I don't know what I would have done without you. And I think that's what makes it really special. And I think from there, kind of that security and that conversation that is allowed to happen, you can really get into the things that matter to people. And you can really start to dive into, I wish there was more of this, or I wish that this storyline wasn't approached that way because I think it represents us poorly, or I think that it like stereotypes the response of the LGBTQ community to how something like this would happen. So I think in that discourse and that sort of talking, when people tell me how they feel about things or about shows, it helps, because then I go to work, and if I go to work and there's a storyline that someone presents, or if there's a line or maybe an emotion that I'm supposed to convey, and I've, overtly heard from people that doesn't sit well with them or they don't think that's right, I can then, think about it and think about a better way to do it, or possibly bring it up to the writers and be like, hey, I don't know if this is really how we should approach this. Maybe try it this way. So there's such a great availability for discourse. And I think that I think the less people are afraid to just sort of talk to people, the better. I think we're in such an age where, like you were saying, you just retweet the thing on Twitter, or you like put up the photo, or you change your profile color picture. And it's just that we're in such an age of easy activism. And I think it's doing us a service because it's visibility, but I also think it's doing us a disservice because we think that that's all we have to do.
Yes.
And I think the more you actually realize that the change comes from sitting down with people and talking to them and using your words and, making eye contact and really trying to convey to someone how you feel about something, not in an aggressive manner, but, just in a friendly conversational manner. I think that's where the power happens, especially even just within the community, because I know no community is perfect. Be it women, be it LGBTQ, be it, the population of the world, like we all have our issues in the way that we communicate with each other. So I think like being given the platform to approach situations in a friendly and productive and kind way, I think is always going to make people leave with a brighter sort of optimism about the future. And I think that that's what Clexacon does best, I think more than many conventions, because it really is focusing on leaving the event with a place to go and leaving the event with an inspiration for how you can be different and how you can sort of project that change into the world. So I don't know. I could go on literally for hours about that particular side of it. But I think it's important. I think people don't talk to each other enough and actually talk to each other. And I think that the event itself is really unique because it does allow people to have that opportunity.
At either Clexacon events or in conversations that you've had, even perhaps on the backside of Clexacon, is there kind of a growing need for a discussion of the series that have evolved, even small characters who were representative of LGBTQ situations? How deep have you gotten into, say, the last 20 years, which really have been to some degree transformational, and others would say not nearly, but you have to celebrate those small wins. Do they have the panels with scholars or even academics or media studies profs who are helping illustrate kind of what has been?
They do bring in people to kind of have that conversation. And I think the conversation also just happens naturally because we have been, I think, given so little as a community, not only as women, but in the LGBTQ community. I think because there's been not enough, we are so hyper-focused on everything that has been. Mm-hmm. And so I think that kind of, in many ways, is great because we have such a succinct history and we can kind of call back and say, well, this happened and that happened. Like we saw all this, like what's next? But now I also think moving forward, it's putting a lot of pressure, which is good. It's putting a lot of pressure on kind of being more inclusive on shows and sort of really taking a critical eye to it and seeing how we could have done this differently or how we could have represented that better. But it definitely feels a little at times, depending on who you're talking to or what particular show, it does feel a little bit at times a bit like angsty, which I understand because I know people are hungry for the content that they want to see. But I've always been a firm believer that conversation should always try and be positive and shouldn't focus so much on the negative. So I think when people get heated and get caught up in the mindset of, well, we don't have this and we don't have that and we don't have that. I think your point of view of saying like, you gotta look at the bright side and say, in a lot of ways we have made progress, which is not to say that it's okay. Obviously it's not okay that we've had so little representation, but at the same time, it's the reality and the truth of where we're coming from. So you have to really reposition the way you look at the progress. And I think we are getting there. I mean, I can't tell you how many times in the last year I've gotten auditions as an actor for characters that they would like to have either actual LGBTQ representation and or are casting characters that are very, either they're trans or they're queer or it's a lesbian or it's a gay. Like there's so much more an eye in Hollywood, especially right now, for how important it is. And I think it's coming out more. And I think that it's building and it's building. We're getting more shows where it's a little bit more acceptable. I mean, granted, are we ever going to have a show that's like Law and Order SVU and the main character is going to be a lesbian, or the main guy is going to be gay, or maybe the main detective's trans? Like, I honestly don't know. I don't know if we're going to get there, but I mean, that's the goal, is that, you know, you have a primetime NBC show and it's open enough to have, you know, a show that is that massive and that popular and that universal across the country. But is that inclusive? So that's what we're working towards. But I definitely, it sort of gets you down every now and then you think about it, because you're just sort of like, oh, okay, well, I don't know if we'll ever get there, but that's the goal to keep working towards. And I think as long as you look at where you want to go versus where we are and where we have been, like you just got to keep pushing. You just got to keep pushing through.
Back in the spring, March, I want to say, I had a great conversation with Jennifer Cation Armstrong, who wrote the book Sex and the City and Us. And she has become an author whose shtick is doing the deep dive of the backside of the development and the fulfillment of seasons of highly successful TV series. The Mary Tyler Moore Show, Seinfeld, Sex and the City, to name three. And we went into a very deep conversation about the criticisms that were, so feminists initially had issues with it, the whole sort of sex positive not in any specific definition, and the role that the gay male writers and developers played in charting the plots and also creating a series of gay characters in and out throughout the course of the series that were approachable and they were accessible and they were guys in your life. And so we had a deep conversation, because that show has also been criticized. Sex and the City has been criticized for all sorts of shortcomings. The lack of racial diversity, for instance.
Of course.
And that just being some. And then to some degree, when they were dealing with lesbianism, it was the lesbian character of Maria and Charlotte's, I guess a couple different episodes. It almost felt a little like somebody was giggling. You know, it did not feel as authentic. It did not feel as thought through as the character development. And as long as we can sort of keep it to, well, on the other hand, that was, you know, the late 90s, the early 2000s. Yeah. And it's still, as a series, represented a tremendous amount of change. And that's what we have to celebrate. So that's where Jennifer and I left it.
I think it's a weird place to be, because we forget nowadays, I think, where we came from. And I think especially a lot of the younger kids in the world don't have a barometer to kind of be able to say, well, in this many years, we've really come pretty far when you think about it. Because a lot of kids who are now kind of coming into, you know, like the kids who are like 18 to 25, or they just don't have that memory of what it felt like to even have a small victory. And so I think it's easier nowadays to look back at, you know, a show like Sex and the City, or even when Sex and the City was on. I mean, for a lot of people, it's just it's so much easier to judge when you've made a little progress, to look back and go like, oh, well, that was even worse than I remember. Like, I can't believe it was like that. Like, look at where we are now. It's like, well, of course it's worse than you remember now, because now you have more, like now you're more available and more open to things. I don't know. And the other thing I like to remind people too, especially with TV, it's like, it's unfortunate that it is such a staple in how culture is perceived and how stories can be told. It's also the blessing of it too, is that you can affect someone's life with a story or with a character or with a show. But at the same time, we have to remember that these shows are singular characters and singular emotions happening for like one particular person. And you kind of need to view it the way you view life. Like, you're not going to walk down the street and look at a person across the street and be like, oh, I can't believe that person just did that. That's so offensive. It's like, no, you're going to walk down the street and be like, oh, that person just did that. Like, that's their story, and let them move on. So if a show isn't for you, then a show isn't for you. if a story isn't for you, then a story isn't for you, and don't watch it. I hear so many people talk about watching shows and they're like, well, I watched this and I just really hate that they're representing people this way and I just can't stand it. And I'm like, okay, well, you watch it every week? And they're like, yeah, I watch it every week. And I'm like, well, if you don't like the show and if you don't support the message, then don't watch it. Like, it's that simple. Like, if you don't think that a show is representing your people well or is representing your ideals well, then just don't engage with it and send a message that way. It's going back to the numbers game. We can't keep watching shows that represent women or represent LGBTQ people poorly and expect anything to change. Mm-hmm. If you watch a show about women, being, brutally beat or this or that, like, of course it's going to get great ratings if you keep watching it. So it's all about knowing where you stand. You have to be an active participant in your own part of this equation.
So we've talked a little bit about the history, the last, say, 20 years, of which 10 of them you've been pulling in paychecks and going on auditions and working through the casting process and reading scripts. Where do you think? Do you think that there is enough strength in the writers' rooms? Do you think that the door is opening up to a more inclusive writing staff on many shows, on only some shows? What kind of report card would you give right now to somebody who is, a few years younger than you are, even earlier in a career?
I think that now is the time more than ever to be excited about where TV is headed. A lot of the writers' rooms that I see are extremely diverse and have a lot of really fascinating, young, new points of views coming up. But that's not to say there are still many, many, many writers' rooms that are all very, for lack of a better word, white and very male. And that's not to knock that perspective or to say that that's not, that they shouldn't have those jobs. I mean, if they're talented and they've earned their way, absolutely. But it varies from show to show. You get into some rooms and you are kind of presented with this like fantastic, inclusive, exciting, sort of fresh, vibrant way of approaching storytelling. And then you walk into other rooms that may be a little more staunch or a little more corporate in terms of the way that shows are being made these days. And you definitely, you're not inspired to approach certain storylines because it just doesn't fit the format, which is fine. Mm-hmm. That's the type of show it is, and that's just the way it's going to be. But I think now more than ever, like you have, IFC is out there. You have Comedy Central kind of branching out on stuff. You have, AMC is telling new and interesting stories. FX is like always been sort of like the leading world of just like breaking every boundary that possibly could be out there. Mm-hmm. So I think there has never been a better time, especially now with online streaming platforms. You end up getting these companies that have disposable income to put into product and put into shows. And they want to make the shows that you want to see. And I think because a lot of the newer, fresher writers are maybe not in writers unions or maybe not, that far along in their career and they don't have as much of like an overhead in terms of bringing them onto shows. Like, you get these great streaming platforms that have fantastic writers and fantastic storytellers, and their stuff is available to you at any time during the day online. And I think that's sort of like where the industry is headed, is to kind of, and a lot of people picked up on it, obviously, because, streaming networks and smaller streaming networks are great, but there's so many smaller, younger companies coming up that are starting to create their own content that are employing the kind of people that mm-hmm. these communities want to see writing. So it's just a matter of hunting them down, finding it, and supporting it.
And every credential that they get, whether it's even, somebody's writing for a small streaming channel, it's a credential. It adds mm-hmm. to the reel. It gets, it's part of their package in their book of business, their book of work.
My thing too that I always say is like, good storytelling is good storytelling. It doesn't matter what your budget is. It doesn't matter what sort of visibility it has. If you can tell a good story, and if you're a storyteller that has something to say, people will recognize it. So if you're looking to get out there and create something and be a part of the world that is TV and film and this creative medium, you just have to tell your story. And there's literally no one standing in the way of you telling a story except for you. Like the way that we have technology these days, you can shoot a short story on an iPhone and put it up on Vimeo, and an executive could see it and bring you in for a meeting. Like that's just how easy it is these days.
And that is certainly the beauty of being where we are today in the United States, having the kinds of opportunities to further connect, to be encouraged. You strike me as a very inspiring person. You're basically telling every listener who's listening, regardless of their sexuality or how they relate to anybody, that if they have a story to tell, it's within their heart, it's within their brain, and no one should stop them. And we don't.
Yeah,
that's encouragement. I mean, that's just flat out keeping things positive in a world that otherwise can be seen as awfully negative and condescending. And you have to get away from those people, and you have to find people who are standing in sunshine and brightness. And I don't say that in a condescending way. I say that in a, mindset, and the builders and the helpers.
The way I see it in this world, especially, you will have no problem finding people who will tell you no. Like you could find them 2 feet away from you. I guarantee it. So in a world where you're kind of surrounded with that much of a negative response, you have to be the person in your life that is willing to say yes. And it's not easy to do, to be that kind of anchor for yourself, but you just have to do it. If you have a story that you need to tell, if you have it doesn't even need to be storytelling. It could just be like, if you're an accountant, I don't care what it is. Mm-hmm. Like, you have to be the person that says yes for yourself, because no one else is going to. And people only respond to, especially in these like high stakes arenas where it's TV and it's this and it's that, or if it's whatever company or whatever platform you're in, people respond to action. So you have to be the first one to take action for yourself. And I think that's the biggest thing. And even as a fan, that really is, it kind of ties back into it. If you are a fan of shows or somebody who is trying to break into this particular world, you have to be proactive in what you stand for and in what you want. And once you give that to yourself, the rest will fall into place, because you're just opening up possibility, because everything is a yes versus a no. Mm-hmm. You just got to keep chugging along. Like that's literally been my only MO for moving forward, is if I'm given an opportunity, I say yes. And I go, okay, I'm just going to make it work for me. I'm going to figure it out. So it's, I don't know.
Because you're working.
It's working. It's working.
This has been inspirational. It's been enlightening. And listeners, Briana is associated with Clexacon, which has a London event coming up at the end of, in November, so toward the end of 2018, and then is going to be in Las Vegas in April of 2019. And Briana is going to tell us how to follow her on social media. But before that, I realize you've just, you kicked off the interview here saying that we didn't watch a lot of TV growing up. But if and when you had that opportunity, were there any series that stuck with you as, the ones you take to the bank, or the ones that you'll never forget?
Ooh, I'm kind of like a little bit of a sci-fi geek. I loved X-Files growing up. I could watch X-Files nonstop, and would love every bit of it. But I think I would say X-Files, and I would also say Mork and Mindy. I loved Mork and Mindy. Mm-hmm. That to me was like, I owned the box VHS set growing up, and I would go home and I'd watch it every day after school. So I think that's like the kicker. And I also I'm such a huge Robin Williams fan, and I think anyone who knows me probably knows that. But that show to me was just like such an education in how to be a creator and a performer, and just an all around awesome person. So
I really think that is a woefully underappreciated series, and I don't know.
Oh my God, it's so brilliant! I watch it nowadays, and I'm just like, why did nobody talk about this more?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And Pam Dauber sort of just drifted off. She was yet another woman who hit probably age 35, and all of a sudden was deemed too old. And,
of course, it was
not sexy enough. Yeah, yeah. And that's and then the My Sister Sam, and the young lady who got killed by her stalker. Yeah. So Goodness, what a career that's been for poor Pam Dauber. But she is part of that iconic series, and nobody has ever mentioned Mork and Mindy. And yet, the beauty of that was that pairing that was as unlikely and yet creative. Wow. Well, that makes me happy. TV is art, and you find the value, watching it and rewatching it and rewatching it. There's something there, and it's okay to talk about that, and it's okay to talk about the women who either brought us that art or actually were the performers, because we saw ourselves for that brief moment. We saw ourselves,
and it very much so formed who we became, which I love too. It's like I feel like I have like 1,000 different semi-mothers who have all informed my growth as a human.
and I'm living that out with this podcast. So it has been fun to be able to meet people actually in person over time, but certainly by interviews like this, where you and I might stay in touch, throughout your career and continue talking about the advancements you see, the analysis that you're bringing forward, living in a rapidly changing, very powerful media.
Yes.
And that's medium, I guess, technically, but medium if you're also in films, which you get into. So it's been a great pleasure talking with you about the importance of everything from these fan events and the conversations that happen, and the importance of there being safe spaces to have these conversations, to what it is that you're seeing in the industry and the change that needs to be made, but how it is that would be storytellers, people who are talented, can make that difference and continue to contribute to a changing society. So thank you, Briana. How do people track you? How do people follow you and retweet your clever tweets?
I go in and out of waves of being active on Twitter, but on Twitter, I'm the Venskus, which is just and then my last name, Venskus. But I'm about to hop back on it because a lot of the shows that I'm on are going to be premiering again soon. So I got to get back on the Twitter. Mm-hmm. I'm big on Instagram. I love Instagram. I'm a big visual person. I love photos. So House of Venskus is my handle on Instagram. And you can always find me there just shooting stuff off all day. So.
Awesome. Thanks, Briana, for being a part of Advanced TV Herstory. And good luck to you in Outcast and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Walking Dead and The Project That Can't Be Named.
Learn more about this podcast and past episodes. Take your favorite person who you want to expose to this podcast to the website, tvherstory.com. That's where literally you can find the entire archive and just press play. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter. On Instagram, we are at Advanced TV Herstory, and on Twitter, it's just TV Herstory. We have a Facebook page, Advanced TV Herstory, a podcast, so that you'll find us. And we have a robust YouTube channel. Please go check it out. Lastly, those ideas, your memories from the 1990s and 2000s. If you are too young to remember what was on primetime, tell us about the animated series that made a difference for you, that helped you become a better feminist. Catherine and I have some talking to do, and we want to make sure that the podcast episode we produce includes your thoughts. So send us an email at advancedtvherstory@gmail.com, all one word, advancedtvherstory. Lastly, if you appreciate and value what you've listened to today and any of the other episodes, consider putting a little something in the tip jar. We have a Patreon account, so at tvherstory.com on the homepage, scroll down to where you get the option to click on a button that says Become a Patron just like Shakespeare had patrons, and guarantee that we will continue to be able to offer highest quality audio, video production, distribution opportunities, and exposure for the many great ideas that otherwise come to you with no advertising. And lastly, how do you find this podcast? Through all the major broadcast channels, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Radio Public, most places you will find them. Please do me a favor and share this audio show with anyone in your life. We're doing it so that we can be stronger together for the future. This is Why I Podcast. I'm your host, Cynthia Bemis Abrams.